Thanks, Ted. I was already started. Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening. I would just like to say that we did start at 5:30 tonight with some closed session agenda items. We are now back in open session. And I would like to begin with approval of the minutes from our last two meetings. We've had two meetings since August 8th, so if I could have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on either of those meetings from the 8th or the 23rd? If not, all in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Next, I need approval of the agenda with no changes.
As written.
Moved by Mark, second by Katie. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. And I did not receive any public comments this evening.
No.
Nope, thank you. Moving on to reports. Happy to introduce our students for the year. Izzy and Caden, if you guys want to come forward. I always appreciate our student reports. And thank you for doing that for the year.
Well, I'm Izzy. This is my second year as a school board representative. I'm a senior this year, and then I play hockey, and I also run for the track team.
Hi, I'm Caden Sardina. I'm also a senior. I play golf, and this is my first year as a student council officer. And so last week, Friday, we had a club org fair where all the students go around the gymnasium to look at all the different clubs. And so I'd say student council actually got a decent amount of new members coming in. And it was just a great experience for all the different students to learn about all the new clubs and all the new places and areas they could experience in the school.
So homecoming's also coming up at the end of this month. I know everybody's really excited, and we're all anxiously waiting for the themes for each day to see how to dress up for. And then we're also really excited for the homecoming football game because football game's been packed lately in the student section.
Yeah, the football games have been actually really well. The themes have been organized very well. Photography's been great. And I mean, just all around, the student section has just been amazing in total. The freshmen could join in with the cheers a little bit better, but other than that, it's been great.
Give them time.
Yep.
Then cross country and girls golf is also going right now. I know cross country's had a couple meets, and I'm not positive about girls golf, but I know they left early from school today, so they had to have something. And then, so obviously there's a hold this last Friday, and I know that some of the students were anxious about that, and we're kind of sad that we missed the ice cream commercial, but everybody I feel like is a lot happier now that Mr. Bresky's agreed to make it this Friday instead.
And so overall, the school has been doing really well. Students are just getting into the routine of the new school year, getting back into waking up early and focusing on homework and then work after school if they do have a job. And so I'd say they're doing really well.
Great. You know, it's always good to hear not only what's going on, but a little bit of the editorial of the culture. So I appreciate those comments that you've made tonight. Anybody have any questions or comments for our students? Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you for having us.
Next, if there are any board members who attended any meetings or trainings in the last month, then you want to share anything? If not, moving on in the agenda to school priorities. Did you want to make any comments?
I did. I just wanted to take a moment. If Rebecca, if you can pull up our school priority document, I just want to speak to that just for a second. Because there's a couple things in here, particularly under priority one, that I just wanted to highlight. The professional learning communities one, that's really a piece that we talk about with regards to kind of a cornerstone of our work on a continual improvement of our academic programs. And that's a piece that we definitely have put as a priority. You've kind of reviewed some of the things. You've seen some of the rubric work that we're doing with our teams. Our staff devoted some of their start of the school year time and particularly to this goal, and particularly to review and set up where they're at with their PLCs, and then also to be moving into that self-assessment of their of how they're doing on per the rubric criteria that we set up. So I think that's a really important piece for us to look at. What we've decided we're going to be doing then is tracking throughout the year those areas that kind of have each of the teams identify one or two areas that they want to improve upon, so that then they can then report on that as we come back at the end of the year. So looking at this, this is definitely a cornerstone, as I said, to kind of our continual improvement piece. The second part to this is really dealing with the social emotional learning, student mental health. And one of the things that I shared with you, and we'll continue to bring, if you can keep going, Rebecca, it says that we bring back to you really how we're going to measure this piece going forward. And one of the things that we've obviously had some transition in our student services department over the last several weeks. Lisa Jondal is moving into our student services director. She was not able to be here this evening, but she and I had a conversation about this goal, carried over some things that Chris Mand had started with conversations with me and our SEL team. And what Lisa and I discussed this morning is part of there'll be numerous different data pieces that we'll bring forward. I think the board had talked about some of the standard pieces that just talk about like disciplinary referrals, because that certainly can be part of what the picture is. But we also want to be looking at with our staff kind of what are they seeing as far as changes in the SEL area. So there's going to be some survey pieces that the staff will do that will give us input into kind of how our SEL work is moving forward. And they're really focusing on self-management and kind of how kids are kind of being able to perceive kind of their self, and kind of how they're then that actions or precipitates out into the classroom. So those are kind of the areas of focus that they've identified. And I will bring back more specifics on it, but I know I had articulated when we first addressed these goals that I would bring this back as we started school. And I just wanted to take a moment to give you at least a touch base on that. And once Chris and I have a little bit more time to kind of finalize that piece, we'll bring that forward. And I might just take that through the curriculum committee if that's okay with the board. But just wanted to touch base on those two things tonight, and particularly since I had committed to bring back a little bit more of what we were doing on the SEL side.
Good, thank you.
You bet.
And next we have a start of the school year report.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think you can kind of ditto what Caden and Izzy had already said, but I'll take a little bit different slant at it. First of all, when you first look at the first day of school, you often are looking at kind of an area that Steve's very attuned to, which is our busing. So I think when you take a look at our bus routes that have taken place thus far, I think our first day went fairly smoothly. There were a few things that we had to sort out at a couple schools on kind of return routes, but we were able to solidify those. On the first day of school, our bus routes were running on time, and that's usually a piece where we're usually a little bit behind because it's kind of the new routes, new students, etc. So we're pleased with it. Generally kind of how transportation has gone this year. Certainly we have all of our bus routes staffed right now. We are always looking for additional bus drivers. And particularly that impacts us not necessarily on our daily routes, but on our co-curricular routes after school, and needing to control as far as when those routes can leave and when those athletes and teams or groups can leave after school, because we have to have first priority is getting kids to school and home, and then the co-curriculars come after that. I feel like we're fairly well situated in relation to where I think some of our colleague districts are, because I know talking to Aaron May, there's been a few teams that just haven't been able to come for some of our larger kind of invitational type pieces, just because they just haven't had buses that could get kids here on time. So that's going to be a piece that we'll continue to work on, but thus far we've been able to meet our needs. I think Brian has already talked to you about some of the staffing pieces. We're still looking for some paras. We have one teaching position, custodial and bus drivers. I've had an opportunity to be in most of the schools over the last several days. That's always fun to get in during the first weeks of school and see the new kindergartners finding their way through school, and getting to the high school and seeing kind of all of our students and kind of how they're adapting to their new schedules. So I think overall it's been a real positive start to the year. Enrollment wise, I know that was a piece I've updated the board on a few weeks ago, just in my notes to you. Right now, I think our budget numbers that Steve had projected were 4,410. And I think as of this morning, we were at 4,408. So we were within 2 of our projection for our budget purposes. So I think that's really positive. Numbers I had given to you probably 3-4 weeks ago, we knew that those would change as we start to have kids move in and out. And right now we'll start to solidify what those numbers are in the third Friday count coming up here pretty quickly. As Izzy had articulated on Friday, we did have a hold at the high school. It's not necessarily where we wanted to start the school year, but definitely was something that we felt was necessary and appropriately applied. We had a situation at the school that required us to go into a hold. A hold is a situation where the students are stay in their classrooms, instruction continues generally, and we just are kind of keeping students from moving about the building until a situation can be addressed. We did have police and an ambulance at school, so that was a pretty visible piece to the end of the day. And then we were able to dismiss on time by having a number of our staff helping our students kind of divert from some of the areas within the high school. I know some of the feedback board members have had was with regards to communication, so I just wanted to take a moment to speak to that. Whenever we have an incident that occurs in school, particularly like the one that happened last Friday, we try to get communication out as soon as we're able to. So there were 2 communications that came out. The first one was really just to try to alert families that there was a hold happening at the high school. So that one was relatively non-specific in nature, but just telling you that there was a hold taking place. We also realized that it's maybe not the first place that you're hearing it, because many of our students have cell phones. They're texting their parents about what's going on. We realize that announcement's maybe not coming out as quickly as some would hope, but we get it out as soon as we were able to. The other piece that we have to realize is that we're sending it out to like 8,000 to 9,000 email addresses. So as that piece gets pushed out, it doesn't send them all immediately. They do get spooled, and some of them will go out over the course of a period of time. Ideally, we'd like them to be delivered immediately, but sometimes they do get caught up in whatever happens within the web, and it may take them 15, 20 minutes to get out. There was a second communication sent out just before 4 o'clock. That one had a little bit more information, but again, there's not a lot of information we can share just for privacy reasons. There has definitely been some follow-up and debriefing as a staff at the high school, and many of our administrative team have been part of that. And I know that there were some classrooms in close proximity to the incident that occurred on Friday, and there will be some follow-up with those classes tomorrow. So that's really my report on start of school and on the incidents that occurred on Friday. Any questions? Awesome.
Thank you, Randy. Moving on to committee reports, starting with Budget Committee. Jack or
Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
First agenda item that is the allocation of fund balance. We did talk at the committee level about the end of the year finances for the district as of June 30th, 2022. Basically, the district was able to save in our general fund approximately $1.2 million in additional resources that were added to the district's fund balance. As board members, you recall the budget committee set out a goal last spring to save over $1 million from the remainder of the 21-22 budget. That was to put us in a stronger financial position to start the 22-23 school year. We did not know about the ESSER 3 federal funds at the time the budget committee made that recommendation. So we did accomplish that goal, and we're able to add those funds into the district's overall Fund 10 fund balance. So from a financial perspective, the district enters the 22-23 school year in a stronger position than we were the year prior. Over the last 2 years, the district has added over $2 million into our Fund 10 fund balance. So that's a real positive situation moving forward into a potential borrowing process, depending on how the referendum results are when we'll have another opportunity for a rating agency to review the finances of the district. The Budget Committee does have some recommendations regarding the end of the year fund balance. The first one is to allocate an additional $25,000 towards the branding effort. The second one is to identify $300,000 in capital maintenance projects as a separate line item to improve the transparency for those funds. So administration requested feedback from the committee on that topic, and the committee expressed a preference into clearly articulating that out as its own line item, so that it could be seen by the public in a report like this. Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind opening up that report for just a moment. No, I'm sorry, the fund balance report on board book. Yeah, that one, please. And if you could just make it a little bit larger. So you could see, if you go to the bottom of it, Rebecca, you see the line called new capital projects, where that $300,000 is separated out based on the recommendation of the committee. If you see the line above that, the $25,000 for branding is separated out based on the recommendation of the committee. The one item that the committee did want feedback from the full board on this evening is traditionally, we do have a process where the ending balance for each building and department is provided to them as a carryover. So if you look at the information on the screen, there's a column that's labeled traditional process. That's what we have done in the past for the allocation of the end of the year balance. The committee also asked to look at a hybrid version, which is the higher of the two balances. The reason for taking a look at that is we did indicate to all building and departments in the spring to place a hold on their expenditures as we were looking towards building that end of the year balance. So the committee asked to present this information to the board both ways to seek feedback from the board. In the end, these are all fund balance funds that the board has the authority to allocate as you see fit. But there's two different ways of looking at it. There's the traditional process, there's the hybrid process. In the end, it doesn't change the grand total that's available in the fund balance. It just allocates it slightly differently. So the committee asked for this to be shared with the full board in two different views. Does any committee members have any, thoughts that you wanted to share with the board members about this? If not, we're looking for a recommendation from the board as to one of those two processes for our end of the year fund balance allocation.
I think the board should understand why we requested the hybrid, and it's the discrepancy of the starting funds available to the different entities. And we felt a number of the programs were at a disadvantage going with the traditional approach. And with the hybrid, for example, the high school would start with 123,000 instead of 87,000. And it just allows them to operate at a full level versus short at the start of the year. Same, you look at athletics, same thing. They'd be starting at
41,000.
41,000, and with the
Versus
hybrid, they'd start at 60,000.
So we would be looking for approval of possibly the hybrid, unless somebody, do you have more questions on that? There was some, a freeze-in purchase orders that we imposed at a certain point that might have given some of these programs a real disadvantage. And that's why we're kind of looking at, is it what's really most fair to the different programs. As Mark kind of explained. So,
I move we go with the hybrid.
Okay.
Budgeting.
I'd be looking for a second of using the hybrid.
I'll second it.
So before we take the vote, other questions? I see people kind of studying the list. Any questions before we vote?
Let's move to a vote.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, thank you. Anything else that you need?
If I could just mention that during the referendum portion of the agenda, there is another budget committee recommendation that I'll share with the rest of the board members about communication, but I can save it to that.
Okay, thank you. The next committee is the facility committee. There were a couple major topics at that committee meeting. One was with the help of Jay from Vogel, identifying subcontractors to help us in our potential building project if that referendum passes. And I just want to, applaud Jay for stepping up and identifying and getting bids from subcontractors and vetting them for us. And we hope to have some list to you in October. The other part or the other thing in that meeting that we do need approval on is a potential remodel of a middle school classroom for a new science lab. And I know Tim helped us out and Jeff is here in the audience. I don't know if you guys want to explain. We had an enlargement of a class and we needed another science room, basically.
We updated a science room about a year ago at the middle school, and I think what we're looking at right now is to duplicate that. We see this as also being appropriate even as the middle school transitions to a high school campus, and that this would still be utilized and of value. So our hope is that we can accomplish this sometime during the school year, during one of our down periods, and still have this in line for our students and our teachers to use throughout the year, or much of the year.
So the cost estimate is included in here. And if there are no questions, I would take a move to approve that.
I was just looking at the quotes on it. Why wouldn't Vogel have backsplash in these base cabinets? Is there no backsplash needed for them? It was just strange.
I don't know that answer.
I just looked at it and it seemed strange. It just put it in work not included in backsplash. Base cabinets. I thought, is it part of the countertop? Then they're including that. So. Some minor thing, it just seems strange.
Are these tables that go against the wall?
Yeah,
Both
just putting in cabinets and, have a new countertop and maybe it's part of the countertop and that's why but it didn't really spell it out. So. It was weird.
I can't specifically speak to that, but we can follow up with that
Jeff,
question.
you,
Is there a here? Oh, would there be that?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep, and you had a picture of it in that, but I didn't see it the second, remember, but it was just strange that it wasn't included. And maybe it isn't needed.
Gathering is probably not needed, and that's
Right.
why it's not there.
That's why.
That's what my guess is.
That was it.
okay, any other comments? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve this.
To approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, thank you. The DEI committee meeting,
The DEI committee went, bringing forward three, equity statement drafts. If you could pull that up. going to the bond portion of it. The first one was crafted as, by one of the committee members. The second option is a combination of that plus a different option presented. The committee was sort of at a pause, and they asked Randy and Tim to work out a polishing between option 2 and 1, and option 3 is what was brought forward. And so we're looking for any response from the board. We're not looking for an approval of one tonight, but more any comments or suggestions.
So your process, Mark, is you'd like some feedback tonight so that you can take it back to the committee and then bring one recommendation
To
forward.
the board as a whole.
Okay.
I personally like option 3. I think option 2, the last sentence is just kind of cumbersome. So much in there. I like the delineation in the third, where you have the sentencing just seems cleaner, smoother. And personally, I like the word committed in there. We're committed to this. I like option 3.
I don't know that it standing out as an equity statement is something that we discuss. In addition to the mission statement, vision statement, it's visionary aspirations is what this is, and I like option 1. And how it states that, I would be more in preference of option 1.
And I apologize. I'm having a hard time hearing.
I talked to what? I was more in,
No.
no, I was more in, I liked option 1. And stating it kind of, you know, it's not its own standalone equity statement, but it represents the visionary aspirations, I think, or, you know, it's what we should strive to be, you know.
Yeah, that's my question too. Is this, where does this equity statement fit in the mission, the statement, and the visionary? It's a
It's
standalone?
It's a
Okay.
standalone statement.
And is there a reason why it should stand alone?
I think that was part of
Why
the
wouldn't,
discussion.
if we're looking for an equity statement, that staff, students, community can identify with versus trying to find buried somewhere? I don't know why we wouldn't want it separate.
One of the things that was provided to us was the mission statement, the vision statement, and our visionary aspirations. And some of the visionary aspirations coincide with what we're saying. You know, we have, and I don't know how visible this is, the visionary statements, but I think, you know, there could be an opportunity to make our visionary aspirations more prominent within our communications and marketing, or, you know, at each school level. And I think it's, you know, we want to make sure that it's not redundant. You know, I mean, because we say some of the things that are in the equity statement are stated in our visionary aspirations as well. I think it depends on how you interpret it, but you know, sustains learning environments that are challenging and intended to the diverse learning needs of every student. teaches students to embrace ethics, values, and character. I mean, there could be an area where we could incorporate some of this within these vision, the equity, like inclusion and valuing differences within these visionary aspirations as well, and perhaps maybe make that more prominent. I don't know. I think that was something that we had discussed.
Well, to understand, are you saying the statement itself embraces what's in the visionary statement, or you'd want more of the visionary statement embraced into the equity statement?
I think that there is, within our visionary aspirations, there are some examples in there that can be, I think, considered redundant to our equity statement. And if there is a way that we could mold the equity statement or those concepts within our visionary aspirations that already exist, and then there could be an opportunity to ensure that that doesn't get buried, that those things don't get buried, that they are prominent in our schools or on our website. That's just one thought.
I just think it also, if you look at how can we incorporate this into our visionary statement, it's just a cleaner document. There's one point. This is who we are. And I know we talked a lot about that at the committee meeting.
I personally like the idea of having a separate equity statement. I just think it's important for many students and staff members to know where we stand. And I don't want to see it buried. I think it's important to state it directly.
Well, I think there's a struggle capturing the essence of what everybody would like to see, but if we're going to have an equity statement, I think it supports students and staff in terms of, okay, yeah, this is right here what we support. Now, some of the concepts are implied in the vision aspirations. I think we have a number of policies that address the issue as well, but in terms of people knowing, yeah, the short statement, this is where we're at in terms of trying to provide all students these opportunities. The statement, I think, number 3 does it reasonably well. I think it helps hearing just in the second sentence, we are committed to preparing all of our students to thrive. It's what we stand for. It's what we're about. And to me, I think that's an important statement for staff and students. In terms of, again, equity, we striving to provide the necessary resources and opportunities for all students to reach their full potential. I think that's an important statement for kids to hear, for staff to hear.
I don't think there's anything in 3 that anybody could disagree with, that I think it's a really positive statement. And I think if it's important to the community, which it has been demonstrated this whole couple of years, that they wanted a strong statement, I think we could just put in, option 3 as an equity statement after the visionary aspiration, just, it's right in the same document.
I could support that, a couple of changes, though, I would put, instead of just WCSD, I would
Yeah.
put the Waunakee Community School
Right.
District.
Yeah,
And then I would cross out in the classroom and beyond at the end. They reach their full
Full
potential.
potential.
yeah. We don't really need in the.
The whole point I liked about one was it's simple.
Yeah,
It's just simple because it's gonna go, it can be standalone, but it can, most of the time it's going to be with the other two. So, but I can get behind 3 if we make it consistent. And I think that being an educational institution and district, that, yes, we are providing resources and opportunities. So that to me is a little redundant when we're talking about the visionary stuff, but people like 3, I can go with 3, but I think 1 is simpler.
I like one.
I would say option 1 would be my first, but if option 3 suggests those 2 changes.
And I see it, and I think option 3, like Judy said, and everybody is saying that, I can't disagree with anything that's in the statement. I think it's important. I just, like Brian said, that last part is redundant, but I like it. I think but I do think it is a little bit redundant. But one area that I too think that we could, in both statement 1 and 3, is the part where it says, in an ever-changing multicultural society. I think that doesn't necessarily need to be included in there. So, because, I don't know, I think it's just kind of,
Changing society.
it's just kind of wordy, that's all, But
I think
Not
that
that
gets
because I don't
also
think
to the
our
heart of,
society is changing, I just think it's wordy. Sorry, Mark.
I don't know how you speak about equity without talking about a diverse society. And that, that's what we're talking about in terms of preparing our kids for, is that they're not going to be going into a little homogenized world to work. And one of the things we've heard from kids who graduated is that they weren't prepared in that area, that they felt they got to college and they felt inadequate in terms of understanding the experiences of other students and other populations. And to me, that's part of what we're talking about, is providing those experiences and understandings so that they can function well in that kind of a society.
And what, Brian, when you were saying maybe take out that last sentence in option 3 in this classroom and beyond, first I thought, yeah, that's true, but then I thought that emphasizes that we want to do it now in the classroom. We want to fix things or make it evident now, and then those skills will be used beyond. So the beyond references to the multicultural society that they might be going into, or we all are going to go into. So I guess I'm putting my money on number 3. We're just giving you ideas, right? Yeah.
any other
Okay.
feedback from
Any
the
others?
committee? Does that help you?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Anything else you want to say about your meeting, your committee meeting? You're all good? Okay, moving on to co-curricular meeting.
So, yeah, co-curricular Sylvan has, we talked about a little bit, reviewed with Aaron about our coaches evaluation process. Discussed our co-op arrangements. Don't expect any changes with that, but just wanted to give us an update on our co-op arrangements, which we do talk about this time about every year. The last thing we do want some action on is consideration of robotics club. this is sort of a early implementation of a club of STEM that they, I assume you want to develop a class regarding just robotics and stuff like that. But it would be, and Randy or Tim, if you want to take more of this, but it's already would be funded. All right.
This follows a little bit different process than we normally bring clubs. Usually clubs are coming forward with student interest is driving it first, and then there's an advisor, and then we bring the club to you. That's normally our process, and then a club has to be in existence for 3 years to show sustainability, and then we consider it for pay. This is one that we're administratively forwarding, so it's a little bit different process. And our whole concept is as we've looked at our STEM program, as we've worked with our advisory group that works with the Innovation Center, and particularly as some of our new partnerships at UW Engineering, we've realized that the robotics area is one we want to expand some of our offerings. And from there, we're bringing to the board really a recommendation to start a robotics club and to allocate an advisor's pay to it. This would be a club that would compete, ideally, is what our vision is for it. But using this first year to get it launched and established, and then be competing in some of the robotics competitions with other high schools in the future. So we're excited to bring this, and we look for your support.
This did pass 3-0, coming to the full board. I think the three of us are pretty excited about this opportunity for our students.
Sounds great. So I'd be looking for a recommendation to,
Motion to approve. I think this is a great idea. It's the future.
yeah. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
Just a question I have. We get new clubs coming in and various ones. Do we ever hear that old ones have kind of gone to the wayside, or is that just?
Yes, usually they kind of just dissipate on their own. So some of them have been like where they've just asked for like a volunteer to be the advisor. Some of those continue, but some of the ones that were in line to get paid, you just never see them come back because they've kind of dissipated
Okay.
over time.
So we never have a club that's being paid for that nobody goes to.
That is something that we kind of take a look at between Aaron, high school administration, and Brian, we'll take a look at.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is our HR committee met. We have a lot of stuff.
We had a great meeting, Brian, right?
It's good to get back together.
Yeah.
Break, and then we came back energized.
No donuts even.
We're trimming the
Yeah.
line here.
Yeah, our energy is high regardless of sugar content. A couple, two items, I guess, for the board's full consideration. The first is a technology department related staffing request. And it again, the economic part of it is in the board handout. The part that the overview is trying to provide a little bit is that again, like many positions, technology is very challenging to fill at this point. What we have found is that it is excessively challenging to fill the building tech assistant role. What it asks for in skills is very much an entry-level technology role, but it's one that's not really market competitive in any sense. And so if we have been able to fill those roles, typically it has turned over for us pretty quickly. One of the two positions that we're proposing that we would eliminate here actually sat open for the whole school year last year. We continued to advertise, promote it through all of our channels. And we had one conversation going at one point, and then just that person ceased interest with us. And so what we feel we could do for the district is provide a better level of service by taking those two building tech assistant roles, folding them into one district level computer technician role, which is a more defined and higher skill set, more market competitive compensation plan, and one that we've had success filling quite recently and maintaining staff.
So you're saying one of the two wasn't filled last year?
Correct. The middle school position was open for the school year. And, Rick is here as well. If the board's got other questions about, how those services would still be provided. But again, it's an idea that district level technicians are supporting buildings as needs arise. They are, they're software, hardware, right.
And I think is it accurate, Brian, that the vision for the department is as those other positions turn over, that they may roll into computer tech position or into more district tech people?
Well, I mean, Rick could even speak to this too, but we also have a potential vision of a higher, kind of similar skill level of call it computer help desk technician,
Right.
which would be available, a resource available to students and staff, again, with that higher skill set.
That's correct. Yeah, it's, as Brian was saying, it's just really been a challenge with the entry level kind of tier one, kind of a hybrid position. And as long as I've been here, we either haven't been able to fill them all, or we have extremely high turnover and it's constantly retraining. With the district tech position, we'll be able to provide a higher technical level and skill level for the staff. And then we would have them cover the, right now we have 2 of those positions, adding a 3rd, then they'd be able to kind of split the 6 schools.
So you're consolidating more or less?
Yeah.
You're going to go to 1 position instead of 2. How do you fill the void of that 1 person?
Currently,
I mean, you're not going to ask this person to do the job of 2 people, obviously, and you're saying it's going to be a higher level of work, so the things that the assistant did, what's going to happen with those?
That's a great question, Mark. And actually, I would say that some of the steps that we've taken as a district have already moved us that way. Last school year, the start of last school year, we added building level technology integrators in all of our elementary buildings.
Okay.
And that was, again, we had that position at 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 12. We added those, and so many of the support and of staff and of students, many of those types of tasks have gone to those individuals. And Rick had mentioned part of this building tech assistant was hybrid. It was used in some regards similarly to regular education paraeducators. And that aspect of the role was generally not very appealing to folks that wanted to work in the tech world. They generally like to work with technology as opposed to maybe doing some work with young students. And so this is probably a little bit more of a truer tech role in that it's pure in that sense.
We had a hard time filling that role, but you only had 1, so what were the challenges you had with just 1? One, right? You didn't have 1 filled.
1 empty, yes.
yeah.
And so what were the challenge, you were missing 1. What were the big problems you had by missing that?
Just providing coverage for technical support, some support for the school. So what we did was had actually one of our district techs more regularly check in with them in the mornings just to kind of get them going. Because again, they also have an education technology specialist there, an integrator that helps with some of the staff and the student support. And then we just recently, at the beginning of this year, lost the building tech at the high school. So I just had to kind of rotate some positions around. Previously, we were covering 2 of the elementary schools with one of the building tech positions kind of on every other day. They were rotating schools. So that's what we're doing now this year to help bring some more coverage over to the middle school. But yeah, those positions just keep getting harder and harder to fill. And when we do fill them,
I think it's not only the turnover, I think it's an evolution of your department, Rick, as you've kind of envisioned kind of where we're going is to fill our needs moving forward. From my understanding of your presentation and some of your vision forward, it's kind of looking at some of those district tech folks because we've already have some different levels of support now that we've infused at each of the building levels. So to me, this is kind of now kind of a reimagination of the department based on kind of how things have emerged within the tech field in education.
Any other questions? If not, I would take a motion to approve this change. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. And I think there was one other thing.
Yep, our second proposal to the board was advanced by the committee to boost the wage or hourly rate of our classified staff. L2, L3, and L4 refers to job classifications. Regular education paraeducators, special education paraeducators, EL paraeducators, and health assistants are captured within those groups. This is a response to some of the staffing needs that we continue to have for those roles. In the board packet, it gave you a little bit of background. We are able to see and check where other districts are at. And so when I talk about Dane County districts, we're talking about the 8 suburb, we're one of the eight suburban schools and, our logical comp districts. And as we stand right now, classified staff, our starting hourly rate is 18% below those districts. And this proposal would take some of that, would close that gap a bit. But this would obviously be a part of a step towards this. But at this time, what we felt at the HR committee felt was a responsible financial step due to the position we're in as a district and the need that we have, that we need to take some actions to try to see if we can help us.
Brian, what would that put the starting pay at?
Wish I had brought that sheet. Can you give me 1 second to go back and grab my computer?
I'm sorry.
The day after we met, I noticed an article in the paper that Madison was going to start at 18. We are not starting at 18. I think it's around 16:30.
That does sound, so yeah, again, there's 3 classifications in it. That would be enclosed in there. 2 would be the lowest classification. L3 would be medium, that would be your regular ed. L2 is your regular ed paraeducators and your library assistants. L3 would be your health assistants, and L4 would be your special ed and special ed and ELL paraeducators. Apologize for not having this material printed and ready to look at it.
So are you proposing then that's a increase in the district that?
No, I'm sorry. Again, just to the increased cost to the district of moving 2 steps or moving 2 steps is $158,606. The total wages for that whole classified staff group is $2.8 million. So that, again, that 158,606 is 5.5% of that.
And was that the 2-step or 1-step?
That's 2 steps.
2-step.
Yeah, trying to do 2 things at once.
That's
not
right.
succeeding
Did
either.
it change from our HR meeting?
The HR meeting was 1 step, so
Okay.
that was 79,000. At the committee's recommendation, they wanted to be more aggressive and make it a 2-step, so that's why the 158,000 is what is in the board packet, because that was the motion that was advanced to the board.
Well,
I guess my concern was we're going to do is, does this align with what we did with the other employees?
last year we did, our custodians, we jumped twice.
Right.
We did it at 2 different times, and that was the discussion we had. We need to do this. We were short 5 special ed pairs at the time of the meeting. I don't know where we're at right now. But those are critical positions, and we just felt as a committee, you know, instead of tiptoeing in, let's just do it, and so we can get people hired. So we did recommend 2 steps.
Mark, what I would say to that is it probably puts things back more into balance where we were historically. Again, we advanced, as Joan said, we advanced the custodians 2 steps, which kind of put that group a bit ahead of where they had been compared to this group. This will kind of bring them closer. You know, again, what I would say is, I don't want anyone to think that this is the only proposal in this regard, but this is what I think is a realistic proposal at this time, with the idea that we would be taking some additional looks at that with a successful referendum in November and some operational funds to use towards it.
Thank you.
At long last, I got what I should have had to start with. So what this would propose would be that our L2 level would start at 1649. Our L3 level would start at 1678, and in our L3 level would start at 1760. L4, I'm sorry, this, yeah.
1674.
So 1649, 1678, 1760.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So any other questions or discussion? If not, we would entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you, Brian, for being progressive with this, and hopefully that will help you.
Thanks.
Moving on to the curriculum committee meeting.
So we don't have any action items for the curriculum committee, but just an update. We're working through the recommendations from the DEI audit. And we are also in the process of, Tim and Amy are reporting on academic progress from last year. So they've reported on the AP test results from last year. And I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add, but we don't have any action items for today.
Thank you, Katie. Moving on to administrative reports, action items, starting with our fall referendum.
In your packet here, you see a number of items that are, what Stephen and I and Annie want to do is just walk through a number of these. A lot of odds and ends here. I'm going to end actually with our presentation that we're going to be utilizing as our base communications throughout the referendum. First thing I want to highlight for you is I included 2 documents for reference for you as board members. One is from the WASB, it's school referendums and advocacy guidelines. And then the other is very similar, it's rules during referendum, put out by our bond counsel, Quarles and Brady. I think both of those are very similar, but they're 2 reads I would highly recommend our board members take a look at. I believe Rebecca has them printed off in your packet as well in paper copy. In general, you have some latitude of what you can do as a board member. You're elected official, so you can take positions on referendums as you move forward and be advocates for that moving forward. Steve and I, as employees of the district, we really can't ever take off our hats as far as being superintendent and administrator. So what you will hear from us is going to be informational items. So when we go out to the community, you're not going to be hearing us advocating about voting preference or any sort of advocacy. It's going to be really there to provide information and to answer questions. And that's generally where our staff fall while they're under employment and under contract with us, but then they have more latitude as they're outside of school and outside of their contract time. From a financial perspective, the school district cannot fund an advocacy campaign or a vote yes or a vote no type campaign. But we can put out information as we have in mailers that provide information about the vote, about what's on the ballot, and information to clarify the issues to the best of our ability. So those are the things that we just wanted to kind of bring to your attention. It's often an area that board members have questions about. So I just recommend that you take some time to read through those. And if you have any questions, let Rebecca, Steve, or I know. And if we don't know the answer, we will find it out for you. The next piece that we have in here is if we can pull up the timeline, please. What Annie has put together here for us is really an organized picture of the work that we have going forward over the next number of months. And as we have communication opportunities scheduled, she has them articulated on here. So you can see that one of our first engagement opportunities that we're going to have community-wise is actually Wednesday. We're going to have a webinar for the whole community. That'll be a piece that Steve and I will present, the presentation that you'll see in a little bit, and then we will be opening it up for questions. There's also people can submit questions ahead of time, which will give us an opportunity to provide our best answers. So what we're trying to do under that scenario is really present really what our history has been and kind of where we're going and what the elements of the referendum are, build the why behind it, and also talk about the financials. But Steve will show you a little bit more of that presentation in a bit. But you can see generally what we are trying to do from internal communications to external communications, going to municipalities. Tomorrow morning, we're presenting to the Chamber Board of Directors. And then we have things that we want to do with staff. We have an open house at the middle school at Heritage. We have some other community engagement opportunities. We have PTOs that we're meeting with. We're going to go out to all of our municipalities. And so I just ask that if you'll take a look at when we go to your municipality, if you're available, if you could join us. And you're welcome at any of the other ones too. I think don't need certainly the whole board present at all of these things, but certainly if there's ones that you feel like you would like to attend, we'd welcome your attendance and being with us. We'll do most of the presenting, but obviously there's questions or perspectives that you can certainly add. But as we go to your municipality pieces, it would be great if you'd be able to join us at those meetings. But generally, this is just to give you an idea of what we have out there. If there are other groups that we have missed, if there's people that you'd like us to reach out to, if there's something, if you know that there's a group of people talking about the referendum that just have questions, we're happy to come out and meet with them or meet with them in this room, however it works. So, but generally we are trying to hit most of the ones that we've done traditionally over time. I think there's somewhere between 15 and 20 different engagements we have thus far scheduled.
Do you want board members to be participating like the open houses or do you?
Yes, I think that would be great. If there were people, if you want to be present at those open houses, correct. That'd be great. And part of that is we want to be able to give people tours of some of the facilities to show some of the issues. Annie, Steve, and I met with an individual from the community today that we're looking at potentially doing some short videos that we can send out that can get our message out in a different way and also show some of the schools if people can't attend an open house to actually walk through them themselves. So there's a few of those different efforts that we are putting out there, but as we continue to find opportunities, we'll add them to this list, but we wanted to share that with you this evening. But if you'll, yes.
I'm just a little confused. What is the staff open hours?
Oh, that's just where we're gonna do a staff webinar for everybody, and then this is one that, like, I think Steve and I will probably go to the school and just be. It's kind of just like open office hours at the school for anyone who has questions.
Okay.
So that's something that we'll do administratively.
Yeah.
But obviously, having staff informed is a really important part of our process. We want to incorporate. Any questions about those pieces? Also in your packet, you will find an FAQ or a frequently asked questions document. This is one that is a continually added to document and one that we continue to modify as we find better language to explain some of the questions that people are asking. as people do pose additional questions to us, you'll see that be a continually growing document. It is something that we have on our website, so that is a place that if you have questions, it's a good place for you to go to see if you make sure you're answering questions in the way that we've articulated them. And if anyone has questions, it's a good place to kind of forward people if they have a place that they want to kind of learn more. Before I jump into our presentation, one of the things I want to show you are some of the things that are coming out of the visionary team from Heritage. As you recall, when we were talking about some of the work that we're continuing to do, and Epstein Yoon has agreed to continue with our staff in order to meet our timelines, is they have continued to work with our staff on kind of the visioning aspects of what a heritage could look like. And this is based off of them doing some tours of other schools. So Rebecca, I think what I'll do is I'll just take over the mouse here for this, if that's okay, and just kind of drive, because there's a lot to kind of go through here. I'm going to actually shrink this stuff. Sorry, it shows a little bit better. What we're basically looking at here is a placement of Heritage Elementary. So right here you can see this is the intermediate school, and this is one of the of what they've titled option 1A for Heritage. And it just kind of shows a footprint of it. You can see this is kind of an area that you would have like a bus pick up and drop off. This is kind of your parent entry and exit and drop off. They'd enter and exit on both sides of the building. Those aren't completely fleshed out, but it just gives you an idea kind of where those would fall. And then they would circulate out here onto Woodland Drive. The pieces that I wanted to really focus on, though, is there's really two options that EUA has done. They've done a 1A and a 1B. And really what the difference is that they just transpose them north and south. So you can see on this version, the gymnasium is right here. And if you jump up forward a couple slides, you'll see to 1B, and the gymnasium is up here. It just takes the whole thing and inverts it. So that's a piece that they're just taking a look at to see is there advantages, disadvantages to having it inverted in one direction or another. But really the work that the visionary team has focused on is their instructional areas, which is kind of this piece right here. And Chris Michaud blew it up here so you can see it. And it's really built off of a 6-track school, so you have 6 classrooms per grade level. And then it's built off of the idea of 6 classrooms around a pod with a small group instruction area connected to each one. And then you have a large collaboration area here in the middle. So if you think of what we have at the intermediate school, it just expanded out. That one has 4 classrooms around a village. This one has 6. And you also see that you have some sensory rooms, you have some workspaces, you have other areas that kind of go into all the different people that work with our students around a given instructional day, and trying to minimize travel times and also impact how the folks who live and work within like this village can collaborate and work within their classrooms and then out into a larger space. So after they kind of looked at numerous different school options, this is the one that the visionary team has kind of settled on as one that they like the best thus far.
So are you looking at also being self-contained, so the first grade, all their lockers are in there too, like our freedom?
Correct. Similar type concept. Yeah. If you think about like the intermediate school and those concepts, that's generally what you see. You can see, I think they're housed right here, Mark. Right? Yeah, student storage. I think that's what they call them. They're right here. So that's kind of one of the pieces that they're taking a look at, and then you can see on these options. You can see the classroom pieces. It's a two-story building. This is kind of like our lower levels, I think our kindergarten classrooms, which have a little bit different configuration just based on the age of the student. So as you're flipping through this document, what it's showing you is kind of the overhead, it's showing you a first floor, it's showing you a second floor. Okay, that's what it's showing you as you flip through here. Option 1A is just the inverse of it. The other concept we're looking at is one that's a little bit shorter in length, but it has some interesting concepts to it. This is what's called option 4. Again, it has the gymnasium up here. It has a large group area here. So think of an area about this little bit larger than 2 classrooms put together. That could be a community room or a staff meeting room, kind of a large group instruction room here. But this is really, what you're seeing here is you're not seeing a large cafeteria. And what they've done is they've created multiple smaller cafes. And let me show you a little bit blown up picture of that. So again, you see the collaboration space around the 6 classrooms, but it's got 2 flex cafes on each level, so it's got a total of 4. The whole idea is when we were touring some of these schools, many of these villages had what they call a wet room, or an area that had, think of a place that had more of a vinyl floor with a drain, and you could do an art project, you could be doing kind of a science project, and you're not as worried about it being on the carpeted area. So they had some additional rooms or spaces that were created within these villages that type of work could take place in. What they also found was that one of the things that schools have wanted to do is minimize travel time and minimize kind of just the size of the groups you put together. So the concept here was to have 4 different cafes, smaller in size than a regular cafeteria, but a little bit larger than, this is a regular size classroom, so it's maybe 1.5 classroom sizes. Now these students could go eat lunch in. You have kind of a servery on both levels that are connected with an elevator. The main kitchen would be on the 1st level. 2nd level, there's an elevator to bring the food up. There's a servery here. And this would have really kind of more generalized use throughout the day, as opposed to a cafeteria that really has a lot of activity around the lunch period and then after school, but has less activity potentially during the school day. This would be something that would have utilization by the students on a more accessible basis.
Would those rooms, would all 1st grade eat at the same time, or would there be a rotation?
It's probably some sort of a rotation. I can't answer that question from a scheduling standpoint. Monona Grove has this in one of their schools that we toured, and we thought we liked the concept initially, but didn't know if it fit for us until we kind of have gone back and started to rethink about it, reimagine it. And Chris Michaud, one of the architects, brought us this concept, which we are considering. One of the pieces that was our initial concern about it was our gymnasiums, for example, get used during the weekends as well. They get used by groups coming in, and by having adjacency to this large group area, and then also, I think we saw, some of you have been to some of the schools in Sun Prairie, they've created what's really a small little kitchen area where people can plug in crock pots and those type of things, and that's really what this is. So this would still address that need community-wise, but would allow us to do something instructionally that really brought some of these cafes and some of the scheduling pieces. I think the staff are generally liking this concept, and I know that administratively we are. Steve's been working with Taher to just get a sense of how that works within their environment, and John Kramer's been working with kind of the custodial folks in different districts that have a model like this to see how that staffing piece works. But generally, it's come back positive, but we're still vetting that out. But what I wanted to do tonight was just show you a little bit of the work of what we're putting together. None of these are finalized, but it just gives you a picture of kind of some of the concepts at a very structural level of what's coming forward. Any questions?
You do this particular concept is to increase staffing.
And that's one of the things we're taking a look at. Is that does it require more staffing, or how would we need to staff it? Our initial response that we received from one of the schools that has this was no, but it was maybe how you utilize your staff during that period. You wouldn't have 4 cafeterias running all at the same time. It would probably still be alternated. So it's just a matter of moving through that space. But that's a piece we're vetting out. That's one of the questions we have. But from an instructional standpoint, it's got a lot of benefits being right in the adjacency to these collaboration areas. I think it's going to get quite a bit of use. And that's kind of what we've seen from talking to some of the schools that have this. But it wasn't really a concept we had in our mind until we did some of our tours. And it's, as we kind of imagined it, envisioned it out, it really does have some application. We'll continue to kind of move those pieces forward. This is something that at some point does need to come to you for kind of like an approval process as we go forward. But right now we're still kind of in the visioning conceptualization piece. Staff have been involved in this from the heritage standpoint. Amy Johnson's been involved from the elementary end as well as Dan Carter. All right. Rebecca, I'll turn the controls back to you and you can kick it back to our board books. And the last thing we wanted to really share with you are some of the things that I know Annie and Steve have worked on, particularly with our partners at Vogel and the UA, which is our presentation that we are going to be taking out when we have all of those meetings that we showed you the schedule for. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you, and I know Annie is here if there's any questions.
Thanks, Randy. What I specifically want to cover with the board members, the information that you shared at the budget committee meeting, and a recommendation from the budget committee as far as a change in the language that we're using in the referendum communications. So Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind going over that shared drive and just opening up the presentation.
Presentation you have in the board book has changed since we put it in the board book. So we have a new one that we're showing you here tonight, and that's what Steve's going to highlight for you.
Yep, and I'm gonna move through the presentation towards some of the financial slides. Be happy to go back if you wanted us to. So Rainey's going through some of that information. I want to focus in for a moment on this slide. So one of the most important things to share with the community is how the school financial information is being communicated and what it means. So during the month of July, the school board approved a preliminary budget that is presented to the community during the annual meeting. So the annual meeting is the third Monday in October. And it's important to note that that budget does not include the referendum. That was approved in July. The board approved referendum resolutions in August. So if you see the box to the right, we are describing if both referendum questions are approved. We are also describing if both referendum questions are not approved. So that if the both referendum questions are not approved, is the preliminary budget that the board has already approved without a referendum and is being brought forward to the public at the annual meeting. As board members, you know that that budget included a debt repayment of $6.8 million. In the prior fiscal year, we had a debt repayment of $4.8 million. So we are communicating that out to the public, that that budget that has already been approved is $38.5 million for a school levy, a tax rate that is estimated at $10.89, and a debt repayment of $6.8 million. During the month of July, EMA Financial Network had Eric Cass come out and provide a presentation to the school board. That presentation showed what a financial plan would look like with a $175 million referendum question and an operational referendum question. At that time, it was a 5-year question that Eric presented to the board in July. That plan included a consistent tax rate of $10.89, but did not include a debt repayment. So instead of a debt repayment under that scenario, the board would be issuing new debt if the referendum were to be approved, and under the operational referendum question would have the ability to increase the funds in Fund 10. So this chart is showing the difference between a referendum approved budget, so if both questions are approved, and the budget that the board has already approved, which does not include a referendum. In the end, the tax levy remains the same under the two scenarios. The main difference is under the scenario with no referendum, the board's approved budget would pay down debt. Under the version with both questions being approved, we would not do that. So it's important to understand the difference between the two scenarios. Once we get to the month of October, Allie and I will actually be presenting you 4 possible scenarios. Because if you look at the range of possibilities, this table shows 2 possibilities, both questions being approved or both questions not being approved. There also is the possibility of question 1 being approved, question 2 not being approved, or the reverse. So there's actually 4 scenarios that could possibly occur depending on the results of the referendum vote. That was a little too challenging to try to show 4 different situations. So we showed, I'll call it the 2 ends, one without the referendum questions passing and one if they both passed. The other scenarios have the purple box remaining the same as well. It's the debt repayment looks different. So we wanted to make sure that all the board members are aware of the way that this information is being shared. But the new information is what came out during the month of August. So during the month of August, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue publishes municipal property value information. So it's important to note that's not school district property value information, it's municipal. But you can draw conclusions from seeing that data to what is likely to occur for school districts in October. Based on that information that was shared in August, it is likely that the equalized property value for the Waunakee Community School District will increase between 14 and 15% in October. That is a very different figure than we were using in the draft financial plan. The draft financial plan used an estimate of 5% for an increase in property value. The information that came out in August is leading us to believe it's going to be closer to 15%. Because of that, administration requested feedback from the budget committee on changing the language that we are using regarding the tax rate. And what you see in the 3rd bullet point is that the example financial plan assumed property value growth of 5% in October of 2022, then 3% thereafter. The budget committee agreed to add the language that increases in property values above 5% may result in decreases to the tax rate. So what that means is that the budget committee would like an opportunity in October to see the actual property values for the school district and may, as a result, recommend a decrease in the tax rate below the level of $10.89. It's important for the community to understand that because the information on municipal values is public, it is available to see, and we are likely going to receive questions similar to what would the school board do in October if the school district's property values go up 14% or 15% in that type of a range. Our financial plan would not require the tax rate to remain at $10.89 if the property values increase that high, which is why we did talk to the committee about adding that language into our communication. But it's important to understand that that is new information in August. that was not available in July when our financial advisor was here sharing an example financial plan with you. And we want to make sure that the community is aware of the fact that the school board will not receive that information until October and is reserving the right to decrease the tax rate in the event that the property value increase is that significant. And it's important because of the communication that we've been sending. The graph to the left shows the history of the tax rate. And the school board has had a goal to maintain a consistent property tax rate across school years. But in the event that the property values increase by 14 or 15%, it is very likely that the school board's budget committee would revisit that goal and recommend a tax rate decline to coincide with the financial plan. So I just wanted to make sure that all board members are aware of that change in the language that we are using. It is related to the information that came out in August, and that the budget committee will be taking a look at that information during the month of October. Randy, was there anything that you think we should add about that?
I think the only piece, and maybe it's something that it gets a little bit more into the weeds, but if we do get to that point where we have as Steve said, a 15% property valuation increase, and that does reduce the tax rate, we also have to remember that there's still a 15% increase in value. So there's a valuation difference that individual homeowners will receive. So really, as Steve and I have kind of run a few scenarios just on the side, the idea of trying to maintain what people are paying in their taxes and trying to keep that as stable as possible. The tax rate is a piece that has some fluctuation. We're trying to communicate around it, but the valuation of your home also impacts that. So when we start to look at really what the bottom line is, that tax rate reducing doesn't necessarily mean it reduces your taxes that you'll see on your tax form, but it may try to keep it more stabilized. So that's really what we're trying to account. It's a very complicated piece to explain, so we're trying to do our best to try to follow it. The new information with the property valuation and the impact of how that looks on our tax rate and our school finance system is what we're trying to wrestle with.
Just wanted to make sure if that makes sense to everyone. If there was any question, we'd be happy to answer it. But I certainly expect that in our presentations, it's very likely community members will ask about the larger than expected property tax increase this fall. What will that mean, especially in relationship to the referendum? And we want to make sure that we're communicating to the public what that means. And like as Randy said, perhaps the goal would be rephrased from a consistent tax rate to a consistent school tax on your home, because in the event of a 15% increase in property values, the majority of that is inflation on existing homes. So if the tax rate itself doesn't decline at the same level, it actually would result in a tax increase. This financial plan was based on a consistent tax rate for homeowners, and new construction being a large component of picking up the additional costs related to the referendum.
Yeah, the big reason we went into this strategy several years ago was to try to keep taxpayers from seeing these peaks and valleys in their taxes. So that's really what we've been trying to have as an overall goal. And I think that's what we're now working to communicate with historic levels of valuation increases.
Maybe good to also add, here's how your taxes are made up in our here. It's not just school, it's the village.
Absolutely. And we're really talking our school taxes. Really
I know. So, but
yeah,
when people
exactly right.
start to break it down, more consistent doesn't mean that the village or.
Right.
Let me just ask, if the tax rate's going up, the value of my house is gonna go up, so I'm gonna be paying more taxes unless we reduce that 10.98. So if we reduce that, then the jump for me won't be as bad. And so I'll be closer to what I was paying before, is which we've been trying to say in some, with some exceptions.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Judy. If the value of your house, let's say, goes up 10%, and the total valuation of the district is 15, there's a percentage of the total valuation that's new construction. And then the majority of it is really your home and other homes with an inflationary increase. In order to offset that inflationary increase, the tax rate would need to decline accordingly to keep your tax bill consistent.
And we have the ability to do that.
We have the ability to do that because the financial plan was based on a 5% increase in property values, not 15. So we would have the ability to look at a lower tax rate to offset the inflationary increase on the existing homes, which is why the budget committee wants the opportunity to look at the real data for our district in October. It just makes the communication of this important because the municipalities have seen their data, but we haven't. We have to wait until October, but we're not waiting until October to communicate about the referendum.
And the other piece is, Stan, the reason we're going to have you vote on 4 scenarios is we have to set our levy by November 1st, but the referendum's not till November 8th. So we have to approve all of those scenarios so that after the referendum, we can send in the right paperwork.
So we could keep this at 10.89 because inflation was virtually zero or relatively consistent, over those years.
But now we can't.
Now we can't because of inflation. So, that's why I think we're talking about lowering the mill rate so that we can keep consistency.
There's been some questions that have come to us from the community that are kind of about this, and that's why we're trying to figure out the best way to communicate it. But when we do put out our communications, we'll probably do a specific presentation that we'll post up on our website that'll just be the financial side. So just looking at what we've talked about here in the last couple of slides.
If any board members had any questions about any of the other slides, we'd be happy to jump to them. Otherwise, we know you're going to get to see this during one of our presentations.
Yeah, that's great. We're looking forward to it.
I'm signing up for 7, for sure.
You can memorize the presentation.
Anything else on the referendum update?
No, I think that's all unless there's questions from the board.
Okay, moving on to the resolution authorizing money. Be here.
This is Steve's.
Thank you, Joan. So there is a parameters resolution with this agenda item requesting the board to approve a taxable temporary borrowing in an amount not to exceed 8.7 million. And just for the members of the public, what this is referring to is our annual cash flow borrowing process. So most school districts have a difference between when revenues are coming in, which is very sporadic. There are multiple times in the year when we receive large revenues, and our expenses, which are very consistent. So we have to borrow to smooth out the difference between the two of them. This is a taxable borrowing because we are planning ahead that in the event that a referendum is successful, we want to save our $10 million annual borrowing ability for the long-term borrowing that would be associated with the referendum. This is a short-term borrowing as opposed to a $10 million borrowing from the referendum would be a 20-year borrowing. So we want to save our ability to have the lowest interest rate possible for a referendum approved borrowing. So you'll notice this is a taxable borrowing not to exceed $8.7 million. We're asking the board to approve the resolution, which allows us to move ahead with the borrowing process. over the next month to move forward with it. This is not the actual borrowing itself. This is a resolution that you would approve that allows the process to take place.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Seclusion and restraint report.
Yeah, Tiffany, I'm going to ask if you can come forward for just a second. The next item we have is our seclusion and restraint report. This is something that's required on an annual basis to come before the board. Rebecca, if you want to just open up the attachment. This is something that really we've done in the last few years, and it is a requirement for us to bring it to you on an annual basis, and it's broken out by school. So Tiffany, if there's anything you want to add as a preface, otherwise we'll also open it up for questions.
We're required to report any instance of seclusion or restraint. And collect data throughout the year, and this is the data we're required to collect for at the building level. So we report it, and then usually immediately following this board meeting, all the districts in the state usually receive a records request for this information from disability rights groups as well, just to review the information. The previous year we had 0 because it was the COVID year, so we had very few weeks of students in the building. So a few more this past year.
I have a question. The restraint at Arboretum is with one student. Is that 11 times that one student was restrained?
Yep.
Is that a problem that needs to be solved?
Students no longer in the district. But that's was with us. And wasn't with us for quite the entire years.
Any questions? If not, we need to approve this report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, moving on to the parking lot lease agreement.
Attached with you will find the parking lot lease agreement that I'm proposing that we enter with the village of Waunakee. And this is with regards to the parking areas adjacent to the old library building. One of the things that was part of this agreement was, as I spoke to you about previously, was that the village agreed to remove that berm in the parking lot and to repave that as they were repairing some of the areas in the lower parking lot, and they restriped that. That is all complete. I think it looks great when I drove through there. I think it's drastically improved our parking process through there. It's given us a number of parking spots in exchange for really entering into this lease for them for those parking spaces. I think this addresses most of the concerns that we've discussed here at the table. It is a 15-year lease for $1 per year. And that was kind of just a goodwill gesture for us to kind of be able to provide these. They will provide the signage. They will have certain hours that they will be utilizing them. When they're not utilizing them during their business hours, they're obviously available to be used for other purposes. We'll be responsible for, talking to our maintenance crew. They will be plowing the area, but any incidental maintenance that needs to take place in those parking areas will be the responsibility of the village. And at the point in time where we would repave that entire parking lot, they would proportionally pay for part of the area that they are leasing. So I think this is we've gone through a few different iterations of this, and we've come to the agreement that we're presenting for you tonight. I think it's a positive for us and a positive for the community to bring the WNC and the food pantry together into that building. So for your approval, I believe the village will take it up next week.
Motion to approve. Any questions? Thank you for doing all that work, Randy. I appreciate that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Next is kind of a review and a consideration of continuing a relationship with our psychotherapy center.
Yeah, this is when you see a memo that's attached, it's signed by Lisa Jondal and myself. It was actually a memo that was put together before Chris Mann left the district. She worked very extensively this past year to work with the Psychotherapy Center of Waunakee as they started to service many of our students who are at the high school. For 21-22, they serviced 46 students. We met with them on a monthly basis. I sat in a few of those meetings, but the Student Services Administration were the ones that primarily were meeting with them, along with counselors from the high school. The gist of their conversations was just to get an assessment of how things were going. They had assessment scoring with all of the participants in the program. You can see in the memo that it was well received by those who took part in it. Our recommendation tonight is to continue the partnership for another year, and we will continue on an administrative level to meet with them on a continual basis to monitor and to collaborate with them. One of the pieces that we felt was really important to ensure that we had was the availability of counseling for some of our families that spoke Spanish. So they were able to provide that service. That was a piece that we feel comfortable moving forward with this agreement, with that included.
I'd like to continue the program, but would it be possible to get some sort of data at the end of the year as to how many students were served through this arrangement?
Yeah, last year we served 46. We'll continue that again to manage that, to navigate that data. Sure.
Okay, great.
There were 46 individual students that were served in multiple. Those are the number of students served by the folks integrated into the program.
Motion to approve this partnership.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
No questions.
Announcements?
I want to go as a no on that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
on that last vote.
Did you get that, Rebecca?
So moving on to announcements.
Announcements. I do have this in our packet, the National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. I realize that I see that Brian's not announcing them till September 14th, which is 2 days from now. So
Oh,
I have them in our packet, so you can kind of review them, but I won't read them out loud because I'm not sure the students are aware that that's who they are. So
all right.
if they want to get a head start, they have to go in the board book and find it.
All right.
But congratulations to those students, and we can bring that back next month to congratulate them publicly.
Okay, so we are down to consent agenda. I think there's been a request to have Steve kind of talk about our Fund 21 accounts and some of the financial parts in the consent agenda, if you would.
Thank you, Joan. So once a year, we do provide a report to the school board of what's called the Fund 21 accounts. So in Wisconsin accounting, Fund 21 are the student activity accounts that is primarily fund-raised money. The one thing that you will note about the report that's a little bit unique is that it's a negative account is actually considered a positive balance. It's just the way the accounting works in this particular report. So it looks a little different than the reports that you normally see. But the board policy on this topic has a statement in there about bringing this forward once a year to the school board. So we do that at the September board meeting. So there is a listing of all of the Fund 21 accounts. The activity ranges all the way from student scholarships to athletic programs to clubs and organizations. It really runs the whole range as far as activities that occur in a school district. It is important to note that it is basically completely fund-raised funds. We do have board policies that govern Fund 21. It's a little bit different than taxpayer funds, but in general, it's an accounting fund that identifies the various activities that take place in the school district.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve on the funds? Mark, was there anything else that you wanted kind of highlighted before we move to the consent agenda?
Mark?
I think
there a way to get more of a description of what the function was?
Rebecca, would you mind just pulling that up for a minute?
Name or something, we can tell. Just, is there a more lengthy or longer description?
Are you looking at some of these?
Yeah. It's definitely can improve this in the future, so it's easier to understand. There's a lot of acronyms on this for various organizations, and we can do a better job of explaining what these are.
Might be a little.
Yeah. Yep, I can definitely see that.
Okay, so we have the consent agendas to approve with those financials. I would like to make note of the gifts this month. We have our Pride Pump, the Nuffords are donating another $1,000. And in addition to that, we have the Waunakee Area Education Foundation, which provided back-to-school gifts for each staff member with our new logo on, and approximate gift values were $13,500 from our foundation. So thank you to that organization. So if there's anything you want to pull out for consideration, otherwise I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. So we are, any board business that you want to comment on?
I don't think so.
So, setting meetings?
I think one meeting I would like to set is another policy. We have a policy meeting set already, don't we? We're good. So then I don't have any.
Facility committee for the subcontractor process.
Yes,
It's going
that's
to be the week of the 3rd
3rd of
to
October.
provide recommendations on the night of the 10th.
Sure. The week of the 3rd.
Probably gonna have to be the 5th or 6th because we have referendum things first 2 nights.
Does it have to be an evening meeting, Steve?
It doesn't have to be, it depends on what works for the committee.
Well, you guys
Definitely
there's going to be interviews, right? It's going to be an evening meeting. I'm going to be out on the 5th. So we have to, you
Can
can't
we-
do it the 4th?
Can we do it,
Not in the evening.
can we do it during the day at all?
I think we could do it during the day.
Can
Sure.
you do that,
What?
Jack, during the day?
Late afternoon?
Morning or afternoon? Then,
4 o'clock?
you could do 4 o'clock?
Could do 4. Can you do 4?
Set up whatever works for.
Yeah,
the
what
committee.
was our time frame, Steve, that we thought we needed?
I think we probably would need 2.5
That's what I was
hours.
thinking.
Because we were the committee recommended that we shortlist and pre-select. It's not gonna be an interview of everyone, it's gonna be an interview of the top responses. And so it's gonna be more of a condensed process, but I would say 2 to 2.5 hours to set
And
aside.
are we going to try to do all the different categories in one night?
Yep.
If we volunteer for something that day, I mean, it would have to be
You would have to be in the morning.
on Thursday.
Thursday?
That's what
Okay, okay. I'll be out of pocket. from the
What
5th.
about Tuesday night at 4 o'clock?
Tuesday's.
Tuesday's fine, Jack, Tuesday's fine, 4
Yeah.
o'clock?
That's our night, that's our Heritage Open House for the referendum. That starts at 6. I mean, I can start there.
Can we go any earlier than 4?
3:30?
3:30?
That works.
3:30,
3:30 on the 4th?
October 4th?
I just want to state one thing. I just got an email from
problem at EUA, and she wanted to have a Heritage Vision meeting
Yeah.
instead of the core team meeting.
That's fine. We'll be okay.
Okay.
We'll be all right. Thank you.
So,
No, I don't think can we do it the week before or not?
Potentially at the end of that week,
End of that week, maybe.
I could talk.
Can we do it like Friday
That's
that week?
Looking during the day.
during the
Yeah,
day.
after, late afternoon on Friday? Late afternoon on that Friday.
Homecoming.
homecoming.
What time's the homecoming game?
The homecoming game's at night. There's things in the afternoon.
We'll be done before.
There's a
That's why we're
lot of
starting at
events going
3:30.
on.
Events going on that day.
Could we do Thursday night?
Thursday,
There's a joint review board meeting that night at 5:30.
29th, yeah. I'm on that.
Wednesday, the 28th. I mean, we're pushing pretty hard on Jay and those guys now.
Yeah.
I'm good then.
If you want, we can connect with Jay about the earliest possible date and ask Rebecca to try to coordinate this
Yeah.
through the phone.
Why don't we see if we can move it to that week of the 26th possibly? That seems like it'll work better. Maybe that Wednesday or so, the 28th. Okay,
Are you talking September or October?
September.
September 28th.
We'll take a look at that. I like that suggestion, Steve.
Okay.
You let us see how early we could potentially have that meeting, and then we'll schedule through phone calls or emails.
Yep.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Do you need any other meetings right now? No.
I think Tim wants to be.
Tim, you need a
We need
curriculum?
a curriculum meeting, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the committee, how Wednesday looks. And then in the morning,
I didn't hear you date offer.
Wednesday the 5th.
Time?
We could do it in the morning.
Morning would work for me.
Morning, like what, 9:30?
9.
9:15?
I could do late morning or I could do.
No, 9 o'clock is fine.
Oh, okay.
We
So I could do like
I
at
believe we
10:30?
could do-
I could do 10:30 or 7.
I think for us, either really for Mark and Judy.
10:30?
10:30 works on the 5th.
Thank you. And then we'll establish some meetings moving forward at that meeting.
Yes.
Did I hear the policy on the 22nd is no more? We're not having the policy on the 22nd?
Yes, we're having, yes.
Yes.
You're definitely having that.
Okay, 22nd, 7:30. Okay.
I don't know, is Ted telling you things over there?
Yeah.
Thanks.
He gave me a side glance. Okay.
I think that's all we need right now.
Okay,
Good.
we're all good. So we are ready to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thanks, everybody.
Sorry, Jack, I missed you there on the,
Yeah, right.
everything was going